Hello everyone. Welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. If you enjoy long, calm, text-to-speech friendly deep dives into the stories behind your favorite stars, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and, if you'd like to support this kind of content, tap the join button below. Today we're unpacking a quiet chapter that many of you have asked me to explore: what really happened between Elçin Sengu and Barış Arduç after years of not meeting face-to-face, after private phone calls around his first days of fatherhood, after a much-discussed film that didn't match the volcanic success of their summer series, and after whispers that the duo might never cross paths again. Why did they finally meet? What did that dinner mean? Let's go step by step and keep it respectful, detailed, and honest. First, some context. The series that made their names inseparable had the open-window breeze of summer television: bright timing, fizzy humor, a warmth between partners that felt effortless. That tone mattered. It shaped how audiences saw them on and off the screen. Years later, fans still describe certain scenes by the way the actors listened to each other, by the quickness of a glance or the pause before a smile. When the show wrapped, production companies tried to bottle that same breeze in a feature film. The offer came with the numbers everyone expects: big budget, bigger promotion, and it seemed natural for them to accept. Yet reception is not a machine. The movie landed, people watched, but it didn't become the kind of seismic hit that rewrites careers. Expectations had been set at an almost impossible height, and the result was simply human: good work, steady performances, a turnout that was respectable rather than record-breaking. That result had side effects. For a time, the industry conversation cooled. The myth of an unstoppable duo turned into practical questions about schedules and scripts. Meanwhile, life moved on. Barış became a father, stepped away from sets for a while, and rerouted his days around feedings and quiet walks. Elçin did what true colleagues do in moments like that: she picked up the phone. Not to make headlines, but to ask about sleep, health, routines, and all the tiny realities that never fit into a press release. According to people familiar with those calls, she made the simplest offer of all: if you need anything, call me. That kind of sentence doesn't trend, and that's precisely why it matters. Even so, they didn't meet in person. A dozen near misses came and went: an award night she had to skip, a script reading he postponed, a charity appearance that split them between different time slots. The absence of a joint photo became its own story. Online, a theory took root that the audience had moved on, that the magic had evaporated, and that future reunions would be quietly shelved. This is how myths crumble in the modern era. Not with facts, but with silence that gets filled by imagination. Then came the invitation that changed the calendar. Their former director, the one who had understood from day one how to frame their timing, reached out. He was assembling a small dinner to celebrate a different project and to catch up with a few old collaborators. The guest list was short. The idea was simple: talk, laugh, remember what made the early days so special. They both said yes. It would be the first time in a long time that they'd sit at the same table without a camera between them. On the day, plans shifted. A last-minute issue pulled the director away. Another guest fell ill. A third got stuck on set. Suddenly the small dinner became a table for two, set near a window in a restaurant that prides itself on quiet. They arrived separately and left separately, but in between they did the normal, very human thing that people do when they finally have time: they caught up. They compared notes on craft, on what time has changed and what it hasn't. They talked about how strange it is to have your life mapped by other people's timelines. They laughed at the memory of scenes that refused to cooperate. They acknowledged the movie that underperformed without blaming anyone, and they gave each other permission to let the pressure of the perfect reunion evaporate. Was it romantic? The answer depends on what you expect to see when two people with that much history share a meal. A waiter recognized them. A couple of phones tilted in their direction. A photo later surfaced of two silhouettes, a bottle of water, and a dessert no one finished. To some, that image was proof. To others, it was exactly what the original invitation had promised: A professional check-in that happened to become more personal because the person who organized it wasn't there. What is certain is this: neither of them tried to turn that hour into content. There were no staged selfies, no carefully timed posts to feed an algorithm. The silence that followed the dinner was deliberate. It allowed the moment to remain what it was, a conversation, not a campaign. Let's rewind to the assumptions that built up before this meeting. After the film, a story hardened that audiences no longer loved the duo. But loyalty doesn't vanish because one project underwhelms. It shifts. It matures. Fans start to love performances rather than pairings, and the actors themselves start to guard their choices more carefully. In his early fatherhood, Barış seemed to signal that his private life would not be available for public inventory. In her own interviews, Elçin kept the focus on work rather than rumor. Between the lines, the message was consistent: you cannot sustain a career if every project must also carry the weight of a fantasy reunion. So what did the dinner change? First, it replaced mythology with fact. Not a manifesto, not a headline, just proof that two people can sit down, talk, and leave the table with mutual respect intact. Second, it gave them a way to recalibrate the narrative. The questions that had become demands, when will you work together again, softened into possibilities: if the right script appears, would you consider it? Third, it let them answer a practical question that only a private meeting can handle: is there still an artistic spark worth exploring on screen, or have their paths diverged in a way that should be honored? Privately, the answer sounded like this: they remain allies. They share a language of timing and tone that is rare and valuable. But they also understand that not every good thing needs a sequel. The dinner wasn't a prelude to a public declaration. It was a boundary-setting exercise wrapped in friendship. As one person close to the situation described it, they agreed to protect whatever still connects them by refusing to perform it on demand. If you want analysis for the longtime fans, here it is. Their original series worked because it was built on simple ingredients: trust, patience, and listening. Those ingredients are never guaranteed in a second act. When you try to rebuild them under the weight of expectation, you compress the air out of a story. The only way a reunion would make artistic sense is if a script arrives that invites them to try something they haven't already done together: sharper edges, quieter stakes, or even characters who never fall in love at all. If a project like that lands in their laps and their calendars line up, then maybe the screen will flicker with that familiar electricity again. Until then, they owe us honesty far more than they owe us nostalgia. Now, to the question that titled today's video: why did they meet? The short answer is also the most human. They met because a shared history deserves maintenance. Because a director who helped launch them into the spotlight wanted to share a table, even if he didn't make it to the restaurant. Because life had handed them milestones that needed acknowledgement: his new role as a parent, her careful curation of roles, and a phone call can only do so much. And because sometimes the kindest thing two colleagues can do, when the world is busy writing scripts for them, is to sit down, compare notes, and quietly reclaim their own narrative. After the dinner, nothing on their social feeds screamed for attention. Elçin posted about work. Barış posted about gratitude. If you were looking for proof, you won't find it there. What you will find is consistency. In an industry built on noise, they chose signal. In a culture that equates visibility with value, they chose privacy with purpose. For me, that choice says more than any photo could. So where does that leave us? With patience. With curiosity about the kinds of roles they'll choose next, together if the story is new, separately if the story is better that way. And with a reminder to all of us who watch from the outside: admiration is healthiest when it respects distance. Support rises, pressure dissolves. If you enjoyed this deep, measured look that's perfect for text-to-speech, please like the video, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next long-form breakdown. Tell me in the comments, if Elçin Sangu and Barış Arduç ever reunite on screen, what kind of story should it be? A gentle drama, a sharp comedy, or something that flips the script entirely? Keep it thoughtful, keep it kind, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and goodbye.